deal. Make no mistake about it, folks. Every time the owners came to the table and said, fine, we'll increase the salary cap to this, you can thank Caitlin Clark. Every time the owner said, fine, we'll pay for your housing again, you can thank Caitlin Clark. Every time the owner said, shoot, we really don't want to come up off this 15% number, but you know what? We'll move a little bit. You can thank CC22.
Every single dollar, every housing stipend, every percentage point of revenue sharing that just got locked into this new WNBA collective bargaining agreement traces back to one person. And the players celebrating this deal right now need to understand something fundamental. They didn't create the leverage that got them this contract. Caitlin Clark did. The new CBA just increased the salary cap from $1.5 million to $7 million. Players are calling this a historic victory, standing on business, transformational change. But strip away the celebration and look at what actually happened at that negotiating table. The owners came prepared to give more than the players even asked for in some categories.
Per ESPN sources, reported by first, Shams Charania. They hate him right now. They hate Shams right now because the WNBA media, you got Alexa, Annie, Doug, Jackie, they were sitting outside the hotel waiting for the scoop. Oopsie. 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 Shams got it first. New salary cap starting at $7 million, up from $1.5 million. Nice. Average revenue share of nearly 20% across the deal. Supermax starting at $1.4 million. Average salary in the range of $600,000, minimum above $300,000.
Look at those numbers. The players wanted a $9.5 million salary cap. They got $7 million. The players demanded 30% revenue sharing. They got nearly 20%. On paper, the owners won the negotiation. The players came down further than ownership did on both major demands. But here's what former Marlins president David Sampson revealed that changes everything about how we should view this deal. The WNBA owners walked into those negotiations with their financial models already built out. They ran projections, they stress-tested scenarios, and according to Sampson, they were fully prepared to go into the 30s on revenue sharing if they had to. The players celebrated getting to 20%. The owners were ready to give 30%. That's not a negotiation victory. That's leaving money on the table because you don't realize how much leverage you actually have.
This is what the players called standing on business. Supermax starting at 1.4, solid W. It's the owner saying, yeah, here, take some money. Average salary in the range of $600K, it's the owner saying, here, take some money. Below it was reported from $600K to a little bit over $500K. Okay. Minimum above 300 from a little bit above 200. Fair play to the players there.
Now, think about what created that leverage in the first place. The players pointed to ratings during negotiations. Caitlin Clark effect. They pointed to attendance records. Caitlin Clark effect. They highlighted social media impressions and engagement metrics. Caitlin Clark effect. Every single data point the players used to justify higher salaries and better conditions came from one rookie's impact on the league. Not from the collective bargaining unit. Not from veteran players building the league over decades. From Caitlin Clark showing up and immediately transforming every business metric the WNBA tracks. And here's the part that should concern every player who thinks they won this negotiation. The owners knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the players would celebrate getting to 20% revenue sharing. They knew the players would feel victorious coming down from 30% to 20%. Meanwhile, ownership was sitting there thinking we were ready to go to 30 if we had to. But if they'll take 20 and call it a win, let's close this deal.
Expansion draft will be between April 1st and the 6th. Qualifying offers can be made April 7th through the 8th. Free agency negotiation period is April 9th through the 11th. Free agency signing period is April 12th through the 18th. Then training camp begins April 18th. Starting April 1st, we will have 18 straight days of chaos. I'm here for it. I'm really looking forward to this brief free agency negotiation, this brief free agency signing period, the qualifying offers. How fast are these deals going to get done? And whichever team is best thinking on their feet, that's the team that's going to have the best free agency.
18 straight days of chaos. That's what's coming starting April 1st. Expansion draft, qualifying offers, free agency negotiation period, free agency signing period, then training camp, all compressed into 2.5 weeks. And this is where the new salary cap creates immediate problems, because now every team has to completely rebuild their financial structure in less than 3 weeks. The teams that can think fastest and manage the cap most efficiently are going to dominate this offseason. This isn't about signing the biggest names anymore. It's about value creation under a brand new economic system that nobody has experience operating under. Look at the unrestricted free agents hitting the market. Aja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Dee Richards, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, all unrestricted, meaning any team can pursue them. But here's the problem. Under the old cap system, teams knew exactly how to structure deals. Under this new $7 million cap with different max salary structures, nobody knows what market value looks like yet. Kelsey Mitchell is going to ask for a supermax deal. Does she deserve it? Maybe. But which team is going to set that market by giving it to her first? Because whoever does just establish the price point for every other shooting guard in the league. And if they overpay, they're capped out with no flexibility.
Unrestricted, that means anybody can go after. So technically, Feeder could go after A'ja Wilson, technically. They could go after Fee, technically. Kelsey Plum, Kyle Copper, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, both free agents, unrestricted. Telling you right now, I think Sophie's gonna ask for a bag. I think so. Kelsey Mitchell's gonna ask for a super duper max. I don't know if I'd give that to her. I'd rather spend that money elsewhere personally. Damaris Dantis, DeWanna Bonner, Bree Turner. Like I told you, they were mad at Shams Charania for breaking this message. A group of reporters literally camped outside of the offices where CBA negotiations took place, and this guy still got the details first. Shams, after watching WNBA reporters on the sidewalk for 8 nights.
And then there's the media reaction to how this deal got reported. A group of WNBA reporters literally camped outside the negotiation venue for 8 nights. They were on the sidewalk waiting for the scoop, building relationships with sources, doing the traditional beat reporter work. Shams Charania got the details first anyway. The WNBA media crashed out immediately. They were saying if it's not coming from us, it's not real. Acting like they're the only ones with sources, the only ones with access, the only ones who should be allowed to break WNBA news. That's not journalism, that's gatekeeping. And it reveals something important about how certain media members view WNBA coverage. They don't want competition. They don't want outside reporters breaking into their territory. They've built this ecosystem where they control the narrative, they control access, and they expect everyone else to wait for them to decide what gets reported and when. Shams didn't play that game. He got his sources, he verified his information, and he reported it. That's how journalism is supposed to work. The fact that WNBA beat reporters got mad about it shows they're more concerned with protecting their turf than actually serving their audience.
Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark, speaking from experience, players like me are going to be the ones that I think feel it the most, and that's what I think we're all super proud of, because that's what we set out from the beginning, was making sure every player felt a change in the CBA, and that's exactly what has happened. New York Liberty forward Breanna Stewart, the deal is going to be transformational. It's going to build up and help create a system where everybody's getting exactly what they deserve, and more from on the court and the off court aspects. Just excited that we can tell our fans that we're going to be back. Brianna Turner, Indiana Fever ex-forward, Brianna Turner. I truly didn't recognize the dedication and time it takes to build relationships and truly listen to the needs and wants of union members. This process was so eye-opening to me. It's been a true honor to help advocate for the past, present, and future. Seattle Storm guard Lexi Brown.
Now listen to how the players are framing this deal publicly. Caitlin Clark says players like her are going to feel the change the most, and that's what they're proud of. Breanna Stewart calls it transformational. Brianna Turner talks about building relationships and advocating for past, present, and future players. Lexi Brown says that's how you stand on business. Every single one of them is selling this as a player victory. And on the surface, it absolutely is. Salaries went up dramatically. Housing is now provided. Revenue sharing exists where it barely did before. Minimum salaries more than doubled. But strip away the talking points and look at the actual negotiation dynamics. The players had leverage they didn't fully understand. They had bargaining power created by Caitlin Clark's impact that they didn't maximize. And they walked away from the table thinking they won, while the owners walked away knowing they got the deal they wanted at a price they were comfortable paying. That's not standing on business. That's getting played while thinking you're winning.
Erica Wheeler said, Alexa play We Gonna Be Alright by Kendrick. Brittany Griner said, let's hoop. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate all of the support. It feels good knowing that we're going to have a season, knowing that we are going to have Caitlin Clark hoops throughout the summer. Something that was brought to my attention. Shout out to Duke. I believe the season's gonna have a little bit of a pause from late August, correct? For the FIBA World Cup games, right? We're gonna have a slight pause and then resume action. It's gonna be a hot summer. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Like the video. See you next time, and as always.
The season is going to pause in late August for FIBA World Cup games, then resume action afterward. So we're looking at a compressed schedule, a mid-season international break, and a playoff structure that's going to run into October. And all of this is happening under a completely new economic system that nobody has experience managing yet. Teams are going to make mistakes. Players are going to get overpaid. Other players are going to get underpaid. And by the time everyone figures out what market value actually looks like under this new cap, we'll be halfway through the season. Here's what makes this CBA deal significant beyond just the numbers. This represents the WNBA's first real attempt to build a sustainable economic model that doesn't rely on NBA subsidies to survive. The revenue-sharing structure, the increased salary cap, the housing provisions, all of this only works if the league continues growing at the rate it grew in 2024. And that growth rate was entirely driven by Caitlin Clark. Think about what happens if she gets injured. Think about what happens if casual fans who showed up to watch her decide they're not interested in watching other teams. Think about what happens if the ratings and attendance numbers regress to pre-Clark levels. The owners just committed to a salary structure that assumes continued growth. If that growth doesn't materialize, this whole economic model collapses. That's the risk the owners took. They're betting that Caitlin Clark's impact is sustainable and that the league can maintain elevated business metrics even in years when she's not breaking records. That's a massive assumption, and if it's wrong, we're going to see teams losing money at unprecedented rates under this new CBA. But here's the thing about negotiations. The players had the opportunity to extract even more value because of that risk. If the owners are betting everything on sustained growth driven by one player's impact, the players should have pushed harder. They should have demanded 25% revenue sharing instead of settling at 20%. They should have held firm at $9 million for the salary cap instead of coming down to 7, because the owners needed this deal more than the players did. Without a CBA, there's no season. Without a season, the WNBA loses all the momentum from 2024. The owners couldn't afford a work stoppage. They couldn't afford to let this negotiation drag into the regular season. They needed a deal done quickly so they could capitalize on the Caitlin Clark effect, while it's still driving unprecedented interest. The players had all the leverage. They just didn't use it. David Sampson's point about the owners being prepared to go into the 30s on revenue sharing is crucial here. That means ownership's internal financial models showed they could afford to give players 30% of revenue and still make money. They were willing to do it. They had the numbers ready, but they didn't have to offer it because the players never pushed hard enough to get there. That's not a negotiation failure. That's a strategic failure. The players celebrated getting to 20% without realizing they could have gotten 30%. They thought they won because the number went up from 15%. Meanwhile, the owners are relieved they didn't have to go as high as they were prepared to go. And this matters for future negotiations too, because now the precedent is set at 20%. When the next CBA comes up, the players will be negotiating from 20% as the baseline, instead of 30%. They locked themselves into a lower starting point for the next negotiation because they didn't maximize their leverage in this one. Look at the salary cap negotiation the same way. Players wanted $9.5 million. Owners offered $5.5 million. They met at $7 million, which is closer to the owner's number than the player's number. The players came down $2.5 million. The owners came up $1.5 million. That's not splitting the difference. That's the players conceding more ground. But the players are celebrating it as a victory because $7 million is a massive increase from $1.5 million. And it absolutely is. Nobody's arguing that this isn't a significant improvement. The point is that it could have been an even bigger improvement if the players had negotiated more effectively. The Supermax starting at $1.4 million is solid. The average salary hitting $600,000 is a major step forward. The minimum going above $300,000 means even end-of-bench players can make a living wage. All of this represents real progress. But progress isn't the same as maximizing value. The players made progress. They didn't maximize value, And there's a difference. Breanna Stewart calling this transformational is accurate. It will transform the league's economic structure. But transformation doesn't automatically mean optimal. You can transform something and still leave value on the table. That's what happened here. Breonna Turner talking about building relationships and listening to union members is great. That's how negotiations should work. But listening to what players want and actually getting everything players deserve are two different outcomes. The negotiating team listened. They just didn't extract maximum value from the leverage they had. And Lexi Brown saying that's how you stand on business would be more convincing if the business outcome was actually optimal. Standing on business means maximizing your position. It means using every bit of leverage you have. It means walking away from the table knowing you got everything that was available. The players didn't do that. They got a good deal. They didn't get the best possible deal. This is going to be called the Caitlin Clark stimulus package, whether the league wants to acknowledge it or not. Every dollar of increased salary, every percentage point of revenue sharing, every improvement in working conditions, all of it traces back to the leverage created by one player's impact on the sport. The players who negotiated this deal need to understand that. The veterans who are celebrating this as a victory for player empowerment need to recognize where that power actually came from. Because if Caitlin Clark hadn't shown up and immediately transformed every business metric the WNBA tracks, the owners would never have agreed to these terms. That's not speculation. That's basic economics. The owners didn't suddenly become more generous. The league didn't suddenly decide to prioritize player welfare out of the goodness of their hearts. The business fundamentals changed because one player changed them, and that created the financial capacity for ownership to offer more money. Without Caitlin Clark, this negotiation looks completely different. The salary cap probably goes from 1.5 million to maybe 3 million. Revenue sharing probably stays in the low teens. The Supermax probably tops out under $1 million, because the owners wouldn't have the revenue growth to justify anything more aggressive. But with Caitlin Clark's impact on ratings, attendance, and sponsorships, suddenly the financial picture changes. Suddenly the owners are looking at projections showing sustained growth. Suddenly they're willing to commit to a higher salary structure because they believe the revenue will be there to support it. That's the Caitlin Clark effect. That's the stimulus package. And every player who signs a contract under this new CBA should send her a thank you card. So the question becomes, was this the best deal the players could have gotten? Or did they settle for a good deal when a great deal was available? Based on what David Sampson revealed about the owners being prepared to go higher, it looks like the players left money on the table. They got a significant improvement. They didn't get everything that was available. And that's going to matter when the next negotiation comes around, because the precedents set in this CBA become the starting point for the next one. The players locked in 20% revenue sharing when they could have gotten 25 or 30. That becomes the baseline for next time. And fighting to move up from 20% is going to be harder than fighting to move up from 15% would have been if they'd pushed harder now. This is a win for the players, but it's a bigger win for the owners. And if you're celebrating this deal without acknowledging that dynamic, you're missing the bigger picture. The WNBA just locked in a sustainable economic model that protects ownership's profit margins while giving players enough of an increase to prevent a work stoppage. That's a win for the league. That's a win for stability. But it's not maximum value extraction for the players. And in negotiations, leaving value on the table is never the optimal outcome, even if the outcome is still positive. The players are better off than they were. They're not as well off as they could have been. That's the reality of this deal, whether they want to acknowledge it or not.